All right, when are the Russia hoaxers going to start going to prison? Why are the lefty radicals losing their minds over a hot chick in jeans? And did Marvel just release Hollywood's most pro-life movie of all time? All that and more on the Kylee Cast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kylee Cast. I am Kylee Griswold, managing editor at the Federalist. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're just listening to the show, go check out the full video version on my personal YouTube channel or the Federalist channel on Rumble. As always, you can email the show at radio@thefederalist.com. We always love to hear from you. Once again, we're going to talk about the latest in Russia hoax news because, once again, the corporate media refused to. And here's the bottom line. Somebody's got to go to prison.
Someone's got to go to prison, man.
No, Barack Obama is not in the Oval Office anymore, and John Brennan, James Comey, and James Clapper are no longer leading the intel agencies, but their co-conspirators in the corporate media are still keeping the coup on life support and ensuring that the whole enterprise gets away with it. And in fact, Brennan and Clapper themselves came out with an op-ed in none other than the New York Times on Wednesday, where they purport to, quote, set the record straight on Russia in 2016. The piece is a straight up lie, of course. They're just assuming that all they have to do is say, no, everything was fine, totally above board. And everyone who reads the Times will just move on. But that can't happen. Unless the Department of Justice makes the perpetrators pay for their crimes against the country, they will run the same play again and again and again. How do we know this? Because this is far from the only example of this type of seditious co-conspiracy against the American people and our constitutional republic. The intelligence community, media, bureaucrats, and all three branches of government have run a number of Russiagate-like plays against the American people over the past few decades, and specifically the past 9 years. And every time one concludes, a new one begins. Why? Because nobody is ever held accountable. Just think about Russiagate. The hoax rested on two main pillars. One pillar was that Trump conspired with Russia to steal the 2016 election. And this claim was based on the fake Steele dossier, and it basically died the day that special counsel Robert Mueller gave his congressional testimony. But this pillar, that Trump conspired with Russia, was only possible based on the other pillar, which is that Putin meddled in the 2016 election because he wanted Trump to win and wanted Hillary to lose. Now, the newly declassified documents from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Radcliffe shatter that only remaining pillar. Those documents reveal that the phony intelligence underpinning the entire hoax was essentially ordered by Barack Obama and then manufactured by CIA Director John Brennan and the other intel chiefs. Right before President-elect Donald Trump began his first term, Obama intel officials scrapped reliable intelligence showing that, sure, Russia performed run-of-the-mill election meddling, but did not do it to help President Trump. And instead, they fabricated and rushed intel saying the exact opposite, that Vladimir Putin aspired for Trump to win the election. Now, this kicked off the hoax that would completely hamstring Donald Trump's first term in office. Like I said, this so-called intel was completely bogus. In fact, its central claim that Putin aspired to get Trump elected was based in part on the Hillary Clinton-funded and completely discredited Steele dossier. Now, we also learned from the newly declassified House Intel report that it was also partially based on a single vague sentence fragment from an unknown source with unknown credibility, which 5 different people interpreted 5 different ways, according to the report. When senior intel officials warned CIA Chief John Brennan not to include in the final intelligence community assessment the claim that Putin aspired to help Trump because they had no evidence for it, Brennan ignored them and included it because, according to him, it rang true. In other words, it supported Obama's sought-after narrative. The House Intel report also cites an FBI analyst who divulged that leadership instructed them that they were to use anything they had to propel the Russia hoax. The analyst said, quote, "We were to push this," end quote. Before the shoddy intelligence was ever even manufactured, however, the intelligence community leaked their predetermined conclusions to the media, and this set the Russia hoax in motion. Now, Democrats have run this type of playbook time and again, over and over. Every time one dirty trick falls apart, they're ready to deploy the next one with their media enablers on standby. It was July 24th, 2019, that special counsel Robert Mueller testified about his Russia report to Congress, which was in many ways the final nail in the coffin of the Russia collusion hoax. It was just very disastrous for Democrats. The very next day, Trump made a completely normal phone call to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and Democrats, including Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, spun up the call into a nefarious conspiracy to impeach the president. And what do you know? The Ukraine impeachment hoax followed the exact same script as the Russia collusion hoax. So-called whistleblower Alexander Vindman filed a complaint against Donald Trump alleging that Trump had committed various crimes during this call with Zelensky. But this complaint wasn't based on firsthand knowledge and hard facts. No, this complaint was based on third-hand gossip from unnamed sources, media reports, and outright lies, much like the Steele dossier. A transcript of the call between Trump and Zelensky showed just how ridiculous and false the complaint was. But the media ran with it, Democrats ran with it, and for months, the whole country was taken hostage by Democrats' impeachment circus, which of course ended in Trump being acquitted in February of 2020. That acquittal was right after the first case of COVID had reached the United States. And just 1 month later, we were deep into the next conspiracy, run by career bureaucrats and amplified dramatically by the Democrat-run corporate media. Yes, the China virus was real, but thanks to a coordinated fear-mongering operation from bureaucrats, politicians, the media, and big tech, Americans were silenced, shut down, masked up, vaxxed up, kept home from school, kept home from church, kept away from loved ones, and driven to isolation, mental health issues, and despair, among many other problems. Pretty much, the only people allowed any freedom whatsoever were violent Black Lives Matter rioters. Remember when CNN ran a death toll chyron while Trump was president and in the lead up to the 2020 election? That conveniently trailed off after Biden took office. Meanwhile, U.S. government agencies, with Anthony Fauci as the frontman, not only blatantly lied about the origins of the virus, but were actively funding the deadly gain-of-function research that spurred the pandemic. If anybody wants to talk about collusion, how about the Biden administration colluding with big tech companies to censor content that rightly pointed out the inefficacy of masks, for instance, and the risks associated with experimental mRNA shots? Or how about when Fauci and NIH Director Francis Collins colluded to orchestrate a, quote, quick and devastating published takedown, end quote, of the Great Barrington Declaration, which was a document written by world-class scientists that resisted the devastating lockdowns, a declaration that has since been thoroughly vindicated, by the way. And of course, Collins also gave the bad faith Washington Post a bunch of quotes they could use to smear the dissenters as well. And this whole COVID theater was, of course, a pretext to rig the 2020 election, with a mentally and physically unfit candidate enabled to run a campaign from his basement, unmanned drop boxes, ballot dumps, quote, indefinite confinement and thus voting from home, mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, last-minute rule changes, and ballots accepted after Election Day. And of course, the corporate media complex smeared as election deniers, whatever that means, anyone who dared to say that it wasn't the freest and fairest election we'd ever had. What a joke. The gaslighting was truly endless, and paired with the tyrannical COVID lockdowns, it was the predictable perfect storm for the DC protest and subsequent riot on January 6th, 2021. And thus, the next hoax was born. Elected Democrats, hand in glove with their co-conspirators in the media, produced prime-time congressional show trials with fabricated timelines and selectively edited video clips to smear Donald Trump and his supporters writ large as violent insurrectionists who carried out what Kamala Harris called, quote, the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War, end quote. This is the same Democrat Party, of course, that had nothing but positive things to say during the deadly Black Lives Matter riots that ravaged cities across the country for months in 2020. And their J6 narrative was despite the vast majority of protesters not agitating or entering the Capitol, and many others walking through the Capitol halls peacefully after police officers let them inside the building. That's what the video evidence shows. But the facts didn't matter. The fabricated version of events became the bedrock of lawfare efforts not only against Donald Trump, but also against innocent Americans who were just concerned about election integrity. And the ensuing lawfare followed the exact same playbook as all the other hoaxes and hysteria I've already detailed. Prosecutors, judges, and other Democrat partisans made up ridiculous reasons to go after Trump and his voters, and the media laundered the propaganda, once again wasting Americans' time and tax dollars, and terrorizing law abiding citizens with threats of political retribution. It's the same song, different verse over and over and over. And lest you think this hoax playbook started with Trump, just think back to the early 2000s and the inception of the war in Iraq, which was essentially based on a hoax about weapons of mass destruction. Not long after 9/11, US intel agencies eagerly embraced made up or thinly sourced intelligence about Iraq bioweapons and other stockpiles. Politicians in the media ran with it, and the lies led us into the 2003 invasion of Iraq, which cost thousands of lives and trillions of dollars. In many ways, it was like the Russiagate before Russiagate. Nobody was truly held accountable for the WMD lie, or the Russia hoax, or the Ukraine impeachment sham, or COVID lockdowns and censorship, or 2020 election rigging, or J6 persecution, or Get Trump lawfare, and on and on and on. And if nobody was held accountable for hoaxes past, we can expect many, many more hoaxes in the future. Thanks to Tulsi Gabbard, John Ratcliffe, and the years of diligent journalism from a courageous few at the Federalist and elsewhere, we actually now know who the primary perpetrators of the Russia hoax are. We know how it got started, and we know who's to blame. And it is past time for them to go to prison so that this can never, ever be allowed to happen again. All right, we usually have two pretty good reasons to talk about Sydney Sweeney, but this week, American Eagle gave us a third with an ad for great jeans. Here to talk about it with me are three Federalistas, Abigail Nichols, Elle Purnell, and Arielle McDowell. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kylee.
Hey, Kylee.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. So I assume most people by now have seen the American Eagle clip, which I think is pretty close to a week old by now. But in case you haven't, here is what has everybody up in arms.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has very genes.
Okay, so there we have the little fun play on words. Genes, Genes, and jeans, Jeans. Sydney Sweeney has great genes and great genes. Of course, people are all up in arms about it. They're saying that this ad is fascist, Nazi. It's playing into the history of eugenics and the idea that white is right. What do each of you think the core reason for this backlash is? Let's start with Elle.
Yeah. So I mean, when's the last time you saw a conventionally attractive blonde woman in a commercial? Like, it's kind of rare. And so I like, you've had this institutional capture in the advertising world where like you're trying to show maximum diversity or maximum like wokeness, or whether that's having like obese women on the cover of Cosmopolitan, or like trying to jam as many gender identities or races into a particular ad. This has been what all of the like marketing teams of companies have been encouraging their teams to do, and then like by extension pushing on consumers. And so that's a control issue. And so now what this ad is showing is that those people who have been pushing this stuff don't have complete control over like the marketing industry, fashion industry, and by extension the consumers. And so that's why I think they're upset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree. That makes so much sense. I think the left-wing narrative used to be for so long, just leave us alone. Leave us alone if we have a fat person. Leave us alone if we have a gay person. But now that's not even enough. Now just the fact that there is one ad where the beauty angle is so obvious, and it's not someone who obviously advocates any particular woke agenda, just that is enough to enrage them, which is funny because it's not pushing anything. It's just happens to be an attractive white model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the idea it's not really pushing anything is really interesting, because I feel like the loud, woke, knowledgeable people are so marinated in these like really extremist ideas. They're like on the witch hunt to find and to like seek out these meanings that aren't even really there. Like the Nazi thing, it's not really there. They're just trying to read into it and kind of take this stuff that's just normal, like just American Eagle jeans. It's just this really cute Gen Z woman is wearing them, and they're just trying to spin it into something that it's not.
But Abigail, she has blonde hair and blue eyes. How could it not be a Nazi dog whistle?
Well,
Don't you know?
The majority of the American Eagle buyers were also just Gen Z women too. So, I mean, I think that's also kind of silly, but
Yeah, they certainly know their clientele for sure. I don't know, Elle. I don't think I've shopped much at American Eagle since I was layering my lace camisoles on top of each other with a sweater, which apparently is coming back, is what I hear.
We were having the funniest conversation among our Federalist staff the other day, where like you could tell the generations, like who was in what generation based on what everybody's impression of American Eagle was. So like the Gen Xers and early millennials had like a totally different impression, whereas like all of us, like older Gen Z, were like, oh yeah, I mean, American Eagle is like, when we were in high school, it was indistinguishable from Hollister. Like whether it was the polos with the big logo letters with like ripped edges or whatever. So like, yeah, it's hilarious. But like, it's not that creative of an ad. I don't know. Like, it's not the first time that people have made a pun on the word jeans.
Right.
It's certainly not as creative as like the Brooke Shields Calvin Klein ads in the 80s that it invites comparison to.
And
yes, nor is it the first time we've used attractive people to sell products, and even including American Eagle. Like I remember when I was in middle school and we would go Black Friday shopping at the mall, and out front of American Eagle and Hollister were like shirtless, buff, high school to like college age young men selling American Eagle wear. And of course that was men instead of women, but like we've always used hot people to sell clothing, right?
And I guess the misunderstanding, I guess the claim they must be making is it says she has good genes. So if we're talking about the part of the meaning of that word that refers to genetics, the only possible interpretation is that the good genetics have to do with being white. But if she's known for being hot, why can't the good genetics just refer to having good genetics because you're hot? I mean, which is far less politically controversial, even if you manage to find that offensive.
Yeah, that's right. I wonder if there had been somebody with any other skin, hair, eye color combination who had been in the exact same ads, a conventionally attractive person with just a different skin, hair, and eye color, whether there would have been any backlash about the fact that this person has good genes, quote unquote. I also think another reason for the backlash might be, I mean, I think the Trump era has truly broken so many people on the American left. And especially, you just think of the way that Trump and his supporters have been branded as Nazi sympathizers, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, on and on and on it goes. It's like Democrats have really, and specifically the Democrat media, have conditioned people to see Nazis everywhere they look, apparently up to and including just a super hot brand spokeswoman.
Yeah, I mean, so you have like the same people who are calling Trump and all of his supporters Nazis. Those are the people who are also calling the founding fathers horrible, racist, awful people, or those are the people who are burning American flags and waving like Mexican flags or Palestinian flags or Ukrainian flags or whatever other country. Like the Venn diagram of the people who use the term Nazi to like disparage anybody they disagree with politically is an overlap with people who generally hate America. And so like the Sydney Sweeney ad, especially like the one with the classic car, it's very retro Americana. And you have a lot of people who don't like that because they would like to see that retro Americana that a lot of people do like. And it doesn't make you a Nazi to like it. They want to see that replaced with this kind of like globalist culture that erases what a lot of people see as uniquely American.
Yeah. I also think this is so funny in light of Democrats' desperate attempts to stop hemorrhaging young male voters after the 2024 election. I mean, they're reportedly spending tens of millions of dollars to try to lure this particular demographic back into the party on podcasts and whatever else, like the Tim Walz shtick and like the Pete Buttigieg shtick where they all pretend to like be normal dudes, even though it's very obvious that they're not normal dudes. And then their side of the aisle demonizes hot girls like Sydney Sweeney. And it's like, have they ever met a normal American? Do they know what the boys that they're trying to lure back into the party are into?
So, I mean, I think it sounds like the new political divide is you have like the Republican Party is represented by Sydney Sweeney, and then who represents the Democrat Party? Maybe like Ella Emhoff.
Yeah, slightly different standards of beauty there, I would say. Both models maybe, but slightly different standards of beauty. I'm curious, Abigail and Ariel, so you're both in Gen Z. What have your peers' reaction to the Sydney Sweeney ad been like? So, I mean, we've seen liberal meltdowns from like random TikTokers with septum piercings and just having like outbursts about the Nazi coded nature of this ad. But what are you seeing on your social media and among your friends, whatever group chats you're in? Like, what are your peers saying about it?
My peers, the ones I've talked to, are kind of incredulous that it's even become a racial conversation, because that's obviously not what she's referring to when she says good genes. Because I'm also around a lot of Christian women. They also take other problems with the ad. Like, if you're going to find a problem with Sydney Sweeney or the nuances of the ad, maybe the nuances of the ad are not racially problematic, but problematic in some more legitimate ways. So that's usually where I see the conversation steered, is toward the sexualization. But they're like, there's certainly nothing racially problematic. You would have to pull that completely out of the hat. It's ludicrous. That's what I've heard from most girls my age.
Yeah, I would say that on Instagram Reels, there's been a lot of just people mocking the ad in general, and the way that Sydney's speaking, like the like sensual tone that she has. But in general, I feel like on Instagram, I've seen a mix of some people who think the ad campaign did have these like extreme undertones, but also some people just thinking it's like so stupid and silly. And then a few of my other friends who are Christian, Gen Z women also think the ad is just way too sexual. And Sydney Sweeney, they already have problems with her.
Yeah, it's the bedroom voice for them, not the racial eugenics undertones of it.
I saw one video from a left-wing influencer who said, quote, it was something along the lines of, even talking about having good genes is automatically talking about eugenics, which is such a radical equivocation.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's more like a bad dad joke than it is a racial dog whistle. It also just, it bears repeating that this is just all part of the general distaste for conventional beauty standards. And we see this across, this is not just about advertising. This is throughout American culture. It's why modern art has in many ways become so ugly. And, we used to have beautiful statues that would commemorate great American heroes, and then they're torn down and replaced with like Medusa looking shrines to abortion advocates, or like overweight a statue to an overweight Black woman in the middle of New York City, or whatever it is that we're erecting. That's just, it doesn't actually reflect what's good and true and beautiful. It reflects something much uglier. And I think in many ways this ad is also just like a knee jerk. It's just pulling America back to where we already were for so long. It's like we slid toward glorifying morbidly obese people like Lizzo, or, Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner on a magazine cover as like, this is the model of female beauty. And it's like, no, people are over that. That's not real. We all knew that was fake. We were all just supposed to pretend it was good and true and beautiful, but everyone knew it wasn't. And so I do think that this Sydney Sweeney ad is also just part of an ongoing vibe shift. And I'm curious what each of you thinks about that. Do you see the vibe shift? Do you think that the next American Eagle ad is just going to be as woke as it was before? Or do you think this is actually trending in a right direction?
Well, so about your first half of what you were saying about conventional beauty, that's something that requires, if you have an acknowledgement that there is such thing as something beautiful, like objectively beautiful, or conventionally beautiful, that requires a meritocracy of beauty. Like, that requires one thing to be more beautiful than another thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why conventional beauty, and we can have a conversation about whether Sydney Sweeney is conventionally beautiful or not. That's up for debate. But like to say like, oh yeah, we're going to recognize beauty in this woman, is to acknowledge that like some things are more beautiful than others. Some women are more beautiful than others. And there's a million different kinds of beauty. Like, not all beautiful women look the same. But that also doesn't mean that something, like legitimately ugly is like indistinguishable from something beautiful. If you have a woman who grooms herself well and takes care of herself, like she's going to look more beautiful than a woman who like doesn't take care of herself and like willfully makes decisions that are unhealthy for herself or what have you. So you have to have meritocracy if you're going to have recognition of beauty, and I think that's why it makes them so angry. The second part of your question, remind me what
cultural vibe shift. Yeah. Do you think that this is actually indicative of a shift, or is this just like, are we just going along on a general road down and we're just kind of like going over a slight improvement that's like a hump that we're just going to go right back toward our slide toward wokeness? Or is this like, are we coming back? Are we back, baby?
So if we are coming back, I don't think the corporations are any indication. Like corporations are going to chase money. When woke is in and delivers them money and customers, they're going to go with that. When it's out, they're going to go in that direction. So, I mean, maybe I'm a lot more hesitant than a lot of people to declare cultural victory. But I certainly wouldn't look at the corporations to do it.
Although in some ways, and I think this is in keeping with what you said, but I do think the corporations can reflect the trend in regular culture though, right? So, if America is kind of coming back and willing to say the thing, like, no, Sydney Sweeney is hot, whatever her face Emhoff is not hot, and like you can say that out loud, then it's like, okay, that's a sign that, maybe the corporations are not the one leading the cultural charge, but they're reflecting something that's happening that's very real in American culture. What do you think, Ariel? You look like you have something to say.
It would be nice to see, the culture. I mean, I agree with Elle. Like the corporations are just going to do what the money tells them to do. I don't think there are a bunch of executives over at American Eagle who are like, you know what? I want to pursue the true good and the beautiful. Like that's not happening. They just recognize maybe that there is a cultural shift. But I think a cultural shift is only significant insofar as we're going further from, personally ungodly things towards godly things. And if we're pursuing sort of a godless conservative culture, that could just go down its own type of wrong path. Like if there are two different wrong paths, it could go down either way. So I would like to see a return in a culture that like values good things, not just beautiful things. If we're talking about the true good and the beautiful, good matters as much as the beautiful does. And there's nothing good about a sexual ad. So even if there is something beautiful, so it'd be great to see a cultural shift towards all of those things.
You think Sydney Sweeney conservatism has the same pitfalls as Barstool conservatism?
Yeah.
A great point. That's a great point. What do you think, Abigail?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful as well. Hopefully this trend continues to be steadfast. But with the corporations following the money was telling them that the stocks are going down. And then now we've seen a very spike in that after these ads were announced. And we've seen some fluctuation. But yeah, I'm hopeful that whether they're chasing the money or not, like this will continue to be a reflection and the customer base will continue to just, I guess, declare that we like this stuff. We like the more American, like this is American Eagle, like very Americana stuff. The vintage and the retro, I think that's very trendy right now. And I think there's some yearning going on. That's like a term that a lot of Gen Z people are saying, yearning for some sort of deeper emotional connection. And hopefully this will continue to show this deeper yearning for more just tradition and just American culture.
I saw some interesting tweets, and specifically this one that I just kind of want to close out with. Here, this is just a perfectly epitomizes this cultural moment. So if you're not watching, if you're just listening, the tweet says, the same folks who are outraged over Sydney Sweeney in jeans are the same folks who want you to believe Dylan Mulvaney is sexy and normal. And on the one side, you have Sydney Sweeney wearing her American Eagle Canadian tuxedo, and on the other side, you have Dylan Mulvaney wearing I don't even know what to call this, a ridiculous kind of scandalous half shirt crop thing and a weird denim skirt.
It looks like he took an infinity scarf from like 20 years ago, put it into a tube top.
Yeah, it looks like he borrowed the scarf from his middle-aged mom and wrapped it around himself. Yeah.
Sydney Sweeney looks so like modest in those comparison, like crazy.
Yeah. She looks way less sexualized there than she does in the way the ad tries to portray it. But yeah, I just think, choose your fighter, right? Dylan Mulvaney for Bud Light or Sydney Sweeney for American Eagle. And y'all made some really good points about the sexualization of the ad, and maybe that's not the good. But I do think that this is a win for recognizing what is normal and beautiful. There's nothing wrong with putting a hot chick on the front of an ad trying to sell some jeans. So that is just classic good advertising, and it's really good to see a win for the normies, shall we say, if not for the Christians. So thank you all so much for your insights. Really enjoyed talking with you, and I can't wait to have you all back soon.
Thank you. Kylee.
All right, let's do a little bit of culture before we wrap up here. There's really only one thing I want to talk about, and that is the new Fantastic Four movie, Fantastic Four First Steps. It's in theaters right now. It came out last week. I saw it basically a week ago because I went on opening night with my husband, and I've been dying to talk about it. It is, in a word, fantastic. Truly, if you haven't seen this movie, you probably should make a plan to go see it, or see it the minute that it comes out on streaming, whatever you're into. It is a wonderful, wonderful film for so many reasons, and shockingly so, because Marvel in the past, I mean, it ebbs and flows, but overall not that great, especially if you're not into superhero movies, which I am typically not. But I thoroughly enjoyed this film for so many reasons. For starters, the 1950s futuristic aesthetic, really charming. It worked so well. The score was very fitting with that, super triumphant. The characters were incredibly well developed, and the script was good. Good dialogue. It had a very easy to follow plot, which is a big deal for me. I get very annoyed at Marvel movies typically because they tend to be very bad at this. And maybe they're bad at this for people who are not really into Marvel movies, but the fact that you need to have watched everything to see the next installment. I mean, I had not really watched any Marvel movies until I met my husband, and I agreed to watch through them just so that we would have new movies to see, because the vast majority of movies nowadays that are in theaters or that people are talking about are Marvel movies. And so we watched through them, and man, what a slog. There is so much you need to know. So many characters, so many storylines, so many details, so much suspending disbelief to understand whatever dumb sci-fi thing is happening. There's just so much background. And the great part about this movie is that, yes, it will weave in with the rest of the Marvel universe, but you can enjoy it in isolation. You don't actually have to have all of the Marvel know-how and background to enjoy the plot of this movie. And the plot itself does not have a ton of moving parts and a ton of like obscure ideas. It's super easy to follow. So if you're a non-Marvel person like I am, then this is the Marvel movie for you. It also had really cute humor. There's this scene at the very end, spoiler, but where three men try to put a car seat, a baby like car seat, into the car, and it takes them so long, and they are really having a hard time. And it's so cute, and it's so relatable for anyone who's watched a man try to handle a baby thing like that. Just truly darling. It also just nails the dynamics between friends and spouses and extended family and colleagues. Like, each of the different relationship dynamics are really well done. And so if you can get past all of Pedro Pascal's off-screen antics with his co-stars and such, he's really wonderful in the role of Mr. Fantastic. But all of these great things aside, the best part of the film by far, easily, is its pro-life message. And it's not a side story. It is the entire point of the plot. Warning, if you haven't seen the film yet, you're going to hear some spoilers here, so bear with me. In the very first moments of the film, Sue Storm and Reed Richards, the husband and wife astronaut duo that are Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic, they learn that they're having a baby. She gets a positive pregnancy test. And now they had been trying for years to conceive. They gave up, and then she finally finds out that she's pregnant. And this positive pregnancy test could legitimately have been somewhat of a cause for concern, because who knows what problems this baby will have. Sue Storm and Reed Richards have altered DNA because on one of their missions to space, they were affected by cosmic rays that left their DNA altered. And so that's what gives them their superpowers, but it also creates a big question mark as to what is going to happen with their child. Will he be deformed? Will he be a monster? Will he just be a normal person that doesn't have any superpowers, or will he surpass them all? There's so many questions. And in any other piece of modern entertainment, this probably would have immediately developed into a serious conversation about whether to keep the baby and the need to keep their options open and to really, really think through whether they could have a child that would possibly be deformed or troubled or whatever. There was none of that. None of that at all. They were excited about the baby, and everyone else around them is also excited for them. They share in their joy, and there's just this posture from the very get-go of the movie that all of the main characters are just going to love and serve and protect this child. The men immediately get to work baby-proofing the home with Herbie, the robot sidekick, helping out there. They start tracking threats. They're just doing everything they can to be prepared for this child and to love, serve, and protect him. But then, of course, the plot thickens. Dun, dun, dun. As Sue's pregnancy progresses, this otherworldly herald called Silver Surfer comes to Earth to tell them that their planet is marked for destruction by Galactus. And Galactus is this giant, otherworldly, godlike being that basically exists by consuming full planets. He has this insatiable appetite and he consumes these planets. And so Earth is going to be the next planet that he's going to consume. So long story short, Reed Richards tracks Galactus, and the Fantastic Four with Herbie travel to Galactus's planet to negotiate with him there before he can descend on the Earth to destroy it. And the Fantastic Four are captured, and they have a conversation with Galactus, and he agrees not to destroy their planet in exchange for Sue and Reed's unborn child. And in response to this, Sue and Reed refuse. So they barely escape with the rest of the crew. And Sue ends up giving birth to Franklin, their baby boy, in the spaceship on the flight home. When they return to Earth, of course, their fellow New Yorkers are surprised and excited to see that Sue now is holding a baby outside of her body. She's no longer pregnant. And the Fantastic Four have become the Fantastic Five because Sue has given birth. So they're all excited, that is, until they learn about Galactus's terms, and then they turn on Reed and Sue and condemn them for not trading their son's life to save everyone else and all of their children. So Reed comes up with a plan to save Earth, and the plan is to use this technology he's been working on to teleport Earth far away from Galactus. That plan is foiled by Silver Surfer, and so Reed instead decides that he's going to lure Galactus to Earth and then just teleport him to a distant galaxy instead. Now, unfortunately, when Galactus gets to Earth, he outsmarts the team and he captures Franklin. And so Sue, in a final last-ditch effort to save her baby, concentrates all of her power into a force field to save her son, which unfortunately takes her own life. That is, until Franklin touches her and his as-yet unknown power brings Sue back to life, which I think is a really beautiful metaphor for how children do in many ways give life to adults by giving them a higher calling of sacrifice, causing them to mature and just basically become new people and infusing their lives with new meaning. So in case it wasn't obvious from my rundown of the plot, the sanctity of life permeates every aspect of the film. Like I said, Reed and Sue immediately resolve that they're going to protect their unborn child despite not knowing what problems he may or may not have. Not only that, but several times throughout the film, several different characters refer to Reed and Sue's unborn son not as a fetus or a potential person or any other euphemism for a human life, but as a child. They call him a child, which inherently recognizes his humanity. In fact, there's this scene where Reed is giving Sue an ultrasound, and because she has this invisibility power, she shows through her abdomen. She makes her abdomen invisible, showing Reed and the entire audience her fully formed son in all of his humanity while he's still in utero. I think the film unintentionally also does a really great job at fighting back against the abortion argument that abortion is okay as long as it's necessary to save the life of the mother, which of course, anyone who is pro-life will tell you that abortion is never necessary to save the life of the mother, because when we talk about abortion, we're talking about elective abortion. We're talking about the intentional taking of human life. Whereas sometimes if a mother and a baby's life are in conflict, the mother will get treatment to save her own life and a baby will unintentionally lose his or her life in the process. That is not what we're talking about when we're talking about elective abortion. We are talking about intentionally taking an unborn child's life. But there's this life of the mother argument that just comes up all of the time among pro-abortion advocates. Well, in the film, there's the moment when Galactus captures Franklin and Sue knows that she is expending all of her power to save her child, or not even to save her child, but just a chance at saving her child. She has no idea if she might lose her life and her child is still captured, but she is throwing everything she has at this potential that she can save her baby's life, and it kills her. And she has no idea that her son can revive her. And I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful like retort to this idea that a mother's life is inherently more valuable than the life of her not yet sentient child. So those were each different moments in the film, but throughout the entire movie, it's very clear that the Fantastic Four are not just motivated to save the planet, but more fundamentally, they're all motivated by a desire to save the child. Every choice they make is about protecting him and caring for him and saving his life. There's this other really subtle conservative messaging that's amazing. J.D. Vance, a few months ago, if you'll recall, he was talking in an interview about immigration, and he articulated that there's this Christian concept called the Ordo Amoris, or the Order of Loves, where a Christian has different orders of responsibility toward the people around him. So his responsibility and his loyalty are first and foremost owed to God, and then they're owed to his immediate family, and then to his extended family, and then to his church community, and then to his community at large, and then to his state, and blah, blah, blah. And so it just goes out and out and out. And that you cannot do everything for everybody. And so there's this order of loves to sort of a hierarchy, a prioritization to how we love and care for the people around us. J.D. Vance got into some hot water over this. The left blasted him. Conservatives were like, yeah, he's right. But the left blasted him. And I just love that in Fantastic Four, Galactus presents the Fantastic Four with the trolley problem. They say, you can save everybody's life over here if you just take this track and give me your son. And instead of indulging this philosophical game, the Fantastic Four respond in actions, if not in words, with the Ordo Amoris. And I just love that J.D. Vance got blasted by this just months ago, and now a major Hollywood blockbuster is accidentally promoting it. So, long story short, Fantastic Four: First Steps is the most pro-life Hollywood blockbuster in a very long time, maybe ever. If you remember, Dune Part 2 was known for being pretty pro-life, and this just blows it out of the water. So that's really saying something. I am sure that the Marvel creators did not set out to make a powerful case for the sanctity of life, but that is just what happens when you make good art. Good art reflects reality, and the reality is that life is valuable. Unborn life, still human life, still immensely valuable, and we have a duty to protect it. So the movie is unmistakably conservative, not because it tries to be, it's not in your face, but because it shows what is good and true and beautiful for exactly how good and true and beautiful it truly is. I have a piece about this on the Federalist website, so if you haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, make a plan to go see Fantastic Four: First Steps. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning into the Kylee Cast. I will be right back here next week with more. Until then, remember, the truth hurts, but it won't kill you.